Strap yourselves in and hold on tight. This is the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and holy crap, it's episode 200 of the Powell Movement. We are getting closer to 1 million downloads, and before I get into anything, I want to thank you, the people who listen every week, for tuning in. It's amazing to me that technology allows me to create this show and deliver it to all of you. So thanks for coming back every week and telling your friends about the show. I also need to thank my amazing sponsors who make this thing happen. They're the 10 Barrel Brewery, Stanley, Cole Headwear, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and for the first time, I have a ski sponsor for all ski episodes. I will be skiing on skis made in Europe for the first time in a long time, thanks to the good folks at Olson who really believe in what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is creating the living history of, in my opinion, the most important athletes and behind-the-scene players that have said yes to doing a podcast with me. And just saying that makes me think of the people that have flat out said no. They are Seth Morrison and Travis Parker. Seth has pretty much said no from day one. When I talked to him, he said, I will never do an interview with you, and I've kept asking him, and I don't think he likes it one bit. To the point where, while I think he is following me now on Instagram, I've noticed him block and unblock me and follow and unfollow me a couple of times. So at least I'm on Seth's radar. With Travis Parker, it's a little bit different. I asked him years back to be on an episode, and this is what he sent me back. Thank you for this opportunity. Is it safe? It seems like there could be a lot of exposure. I'm skeptical when I think of offering myself to strangers viewing after years of it. I threw my pearls to swine, or was it the other way around? Prove to me that you're a journalist with integrity. Do you have an FBI background check? Thank you for reading this, and please understand that I'm not making judgments. I come from what I thought was high-profile snowboarding in my own mind. I let Travis know that I had been cleared to coach youth soccer, and while that's not the feds, I think it was enough for our podcast. I couldn't really prove anything else to him, and I haven't heard back from Travis. I've reached out a couple times over the years, but nothing. So I'm going to assume that no means no with both Travis and Seth, and that's okay. While I'm on the no means no theme, since this is episode 200, there are a couple episodes that I've heard a ton of feedback that I should revisit. One of them was John Spriggs. John was a pro skier who had been in the news for all of the wrong reasons. If you want to hear his full story, it's on episode 37, and you'll figure out my opinion of the dude there if you listen. Regardless of what I think of the guy, he has been killing it lately. He's an award-winning fly fishing guide, he's sober, and he reached out to me to do a follow-up interview. And really, there is no full interview needed with John Spriggs, but I thought it would be great to catch up with him and then put it on episode 200. So we do our call, and I get done finalizing everything so I can put this podcast to bed, and then I get a call from John Spriggs. He didn't like the direction our follow-up call went, especially when I asked him about wearing masks and vertica, and he asked me to pull the whole interview because he said I was just trying to stir up some controversy. But really, when I interview someone, I do a little research, and everything I asked him was out there on his social media because he put it out there. What a dick, but what can you do?
Yeah, thanks, brother. Thanks for checking in.
So that's where Spriggs is, and it sounds like a better place than where he was. But John Spriggs was really a waste of my time, and while I could have put our chat out there, I didn't want to waste your time anymore talking about him, and that would be so uncool if I put it out when I told him I wouldn't. So that was not going to happen. That whole thing didn't go as planned, and I'm kind of bitter about it, but whatever. I did catch up with a dude who used to skate for K2 when I was the team manager, and pre-drug, he was one of my favorite people in the world, Ben Weis. Here is a clip to let you know exactly where Ben was when he was at his worst. What's the craziest junkie heroin thing that you've ever seen?
Ever seen?
Yeah.
My darkest moment?
Just the craziest drug addict fucked up shit where you're like, can you believe you fucking did that?
Oh, well, that would be me, because to shoot up heroin one time, I didn't have any liquid to shoot my dope up with, so I used the toilet water from a fucking Greyhound bus station. That's fucking disgusting.
It is. Do you get sick from that?
No, I've been tested so many times and over again for hepatitis and HIV. I'm so clean and It's cool. In fact, we're trying to have kids because I'm so clean.
Okay.
And on another note, the craziest thing I think I've ever seen somebody to do drugs would be, I saw a kid eat his own feces one time to get a shot. He was so dope sick. He was like, I'll do anything. And instead of like, yo, suck this guy's dick, it was more like shit in your hand and eat your own poop and I'll give you a shot of heroin.
So you've seen all that shit.
I've seen it all. It's crazy. And in fact, I probably instigated the eat your feces.
That's nothing to be proud of, Ben.
Yeah, I know. That literally gives a meaning to the term eat shit.
So that was the Ben Weis Show, Ben Weis, and you can hear the whole interview with Ben on episode 142. After I recorded that one, I heard from Mike Douglas, a legendary skier who invented the twin tip and a bunch of other skis, and he founded Solomon Free Ski TV, which everyone should watch. But Mike is a living legend, and he called me up and he said, if I was younger, I would make a feature on that kid, Ben Weis. He has so much charisma, and even with the drug use, he comes off as super charismatic and an amazing person and story. And I really wish I had audio and video of Ben before all of the drugs because he had the biggest personality of almost anyone I've ever worked with. And recently, I saw him in Denver for the first time in 15 years. He showed up with a big black eye from an incident at 7-Eleven a couple days earlier. And it was still Ben, but a little bit different and a lot crazier. And I love the guy, but I will say, he brought his bike into a place where they wanted the bikes outside. He offered to pay for a stranger's meal because she had forgotten her wallet. Then he gave me a Coach passport holder and keychain set, but he kept the keychain. And it was just a little bit sketch and a whole lot of Ben, and it was great to see him, but sad at the same time. And after about 30 minutes, I got back to work, and who knows where Ben goes. I generally care about Ben and his well-being, but at the same time, I am not going to do anything other than encourage the dude to stay well and keep my distance. But I caught up with Ben the other day, and here's what he had to say. We interviewed a while back, and then I think I saw you at the trade show, and then you might have had a hiccup where I got a text from your wife that says, Mike, Ben ran off to Florida to go get high. I think I'm giving up.
I would think that's like a half truth, because there's A, what happened, there's B, that side of the story, and then let's see what really happened,
Yeah. So that's what we want to figure out. So I get this message saying that you've already OD'd down there and you OD'd the day you took off without telling her that you were going to go there. And she's waiting for a phone call that says you're dead. That's a text message I'm reading. And what happens in your world?
We don't ever get to hear the side of domestic violence that led to me getting onto an airplane. We never hear that side of the story, right?
No, we can. That's what this is for. You're going to put that out there.
So relapse is a part of recovery, right? I'm going to say that I've been sober. Yeah, I did have a hiccup, and it's because I wanted to fucking die. My soulmate was ripped apart from me because she relapsed. She got out of control. She's dealing with a whole bunch of felony charges and shit. She never, ever would tell that part of the story. It's just Ben's dead, right?
I didn't ask you about that, though, because really I could care. In my personal opinion, I just wanted to make sure you were alive. And sure, she didn't want to tell me that she was beating you up or anything like that. She just said that, yes, you took off and you were doing drugs somewhere. And that probably is what angered her. But yeah, there's two sides of the story. So on your side, you're in Colorado or wherever you guys are together. She falls off the wagon or whatever that means. She has anger issues. She takes them out on you. And you decide you need to get out of town and just head to Florida.
Yep, exactly. I needed to just get the fuck out of Dodge. And I needed to go to a safe place where I knew I would be fed, housed, and looked after. And I also knew that I could just do drugs on the beach.
So what does that look like? Do you have a relapse in Colorado and then get on a plane?
No. I didn't relapse until I hit the beach, the sands. But I knew I was going there for that reason. And I didn't tell anybody yet. It was a calculated decision to pretty much end my life on the beach in Florida. But let's look at the upside positive of that situation. Because of me leaving, my wife then enters a sober program, goes and lives in a sober living facility. 35 days later, I get in contact with her, and she's sober and wants to keep the marriage. And I'm 100% down because I signed a vow, I signed a contract, and I wanted my marriage back. And so when I found out she was sober, I came home and did the same thing. I went into a sober living facility and I went to treatment and recovered again from my relapse. So, yeah, it happened, but it doesn't mean I'm out of recovery or still addicted to heroin.
No, I get that. You had a slip up, you go on a run. The end goal is to try to end your life, but everything comes back together. You go clean your shit up, and now you start over at day one.
Right.
So what does that mean for you in like a sober world for Ben Weis?
A sober world for me is doing exactly what I'm doing right now, owning a small construction company, which mostly painting houses, doing art installations. And it's pretty rad. What's happening now is that I've kind of traded one addiction for another, which I mean, like thrifting and picking. Like I've always had this knack for turning something out of nothing. And I got hired to remodel this commercial space, right? So I then talked to the owner. My car breaks down. He owns an auto garage, so he hooks me up with an automobile. Now I'm remodeling this store, and I'm like, well, why am I remodeling this store for someone else? I want this store to sell all my shit. And now all of my family, 100%, is behind me by the textiles industry because they own an upholstery business, a drapery business. We're selling textiles online. I have a package going out right now to Italy of just fabrics. So this shit is going crazy. And then above this store, which is called Stuff, by the way, the name of the store is just called Stuff. And I'm in the art district of Denver. So I'll have a featured artist every month on the walls, kind of like Ezekiel Anderson did with D-Structure.
Okay.
Now, above the store and my art studio is an old dental office. So I've acquired that. So now I'm going to send pictures of all this shit. It's incredible. I've got a ping pong room for me and my father-in-law. We just play ping pong in there. And then I have a room that is eventually going to be the dance floor karaoke lounge. I have a practice rail, so I skate in there every day. And then I have a huge space where my best friend and co-owner of the business with me is a massage therapist, where he has his table and I get massaged. That's how I deal with my pain issues, is chiropractic, yoga, and massage therapy. So no more drugs. It's getting rubbed down and released with my wife. So we're trying to have a baby. A lot of shit's going on, man. And it's all because I'm being held accountable. And I'm going to be honest with you, your name popping up on my phone. Hey, are you alive? Are you okay? I get those random texts from you.
Yeah.
Hold me accountable. So keep doing that, because I've put it out there to the world. Hey, I'm changing my life. I'm turning my shit around. I don't want to be a liar or a punchline anymore. Mike Powell's holding me accountable.
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy for me to send you a text. The hard part's on your end.
Right. And since our last conversation, my biological father has entered my life.
Whoa. That like a first?
Yeah, very much so.
Is he rich and did he give you the world?
No, he has just made contact. We are pen pals via snail mail, and I get the random calls. He still drinks and smokes weed every day, so he calls me every week to send him weed from Denver.
Great. Sounds like a good influence for you.
Well, weed has never been a problem for me. Neither has drinking. It's always just been heroin. So I can own a bar, speakeasy, and not be worried about getting drunk and driving and killing somebody, because I just don't drink. I watched what it did to my wife.
Well, I mean, everybody's got their drug of choice. It just sounds like hers is different than yours.
Yeah. And they say that, an addict is an addict, so it's a matter of time before something else turns into something else. Well, that's not true for me. And I'm sick of saying I'm in recovery. I like to say I'm fucking recovered. And I don't let my trauma run my life anymore. The sob stories of going to AA meetings, and yeah, if it works for you, it works for you. But I'm done rehashing the past, dude. I'm not my past. I do not identify myself as a fucking ex-heroin addict. I am recovered by moving forward and putting it out to the world and holding myself accountable and holding my end of the bargain, my word. And by helping others get out of that trap, it kind of has stopped me from even wanting to go near that shit again.
Well, good, man. That's exactly what I want to hear. I am going to ask you a weird question or a different kind of question because when I saw you last, I think you had a black eye. And I was like, what happened? And you were like, dude, this guy was coming out of 7-Eleven. And do you remember that?
Yeah, yep.
You're like, that shit happens to me all the time, man. That doesn't happen to you. I was like, no, Ben, that never happens to me.
Oh.
When was the last crazy thing that happened in your life?
Not too long ago, I was stopped at a red light and I let the light turn green and then it went red again. And I was in a part of town that I probably shouldn't have been as a white dude. And I was driving the Volkswagen Touareg that my wife just bought me. And I got pulled out of the car and carjacked.
No way.
Yeah, and beat the living shit out of. And I'll send the pictures of that too. I mean, they fractured my face. And I can't believe that didn't lead to a relapse because I was in the hospital with fucking morphine, oxy. I mean, I had an IV drip system of, it starts with a D. I can't even remember it. Dilaudid. You name it, they gave it to me, dude. And I fucking left without fucking being authorized to leave. I was like, I can't be doing this. I can't be hooked up to this machine, getting anything I want. I need to go. I need to leave. And they're like, whoa, you might need surgery for your face. And I'm like, well, I guess we'll see if I do then. And I left. I went home and I think I smoked a joint. And I don't smoke that much weed. I think I smoked a joint and took a nap, woke up 2 days later and was fine. Well, I wasn't fine. I didn't look fine, but I was fine.
I know you can take a lot of pain. I've seen some of the things that you've put your body through. So that's something that you're just built to do, is take a lot of pain and rip wires out of you at a hospital. Normally, so you don't have to pay, but it sounds like this time so you didn't get hooked on drugs again, which is good.
Exactly. I was like, if you give me a prescription of Vicodin right now, I'm going to go fill that. And then 2 weeks later, I'll be sucking dick on Colfax for heroin. Not really, because I've never sucked a dick, but it's just a slang humor term. Like,
you'll do crazy stuff for drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm glad you're not taking drugs. I guess you might be smoking weed, doing whatever you're doing. But as long as you're not doing heroin, that's like the most important thing, because that drug is one that puts you in the gutter. And right now, you know, you just hear about fentanyl and everything. And eventually you're going to get the bad one where it's just like, even if you weren't planning on dying, you're going to die. And that would suck.
In fact, like the makers of fentanyl make the drug Narcan. Isn't that fucking crazy?
So they can put you out and then they can revive you. So you can go buy more to go out. Yeah,
exactly. It's like waiting for the coronavirus vaccine. It's all part of the scheme and the scam. Trump, Biden, fucking, does it even matter? This is the first election I've ever voted in because there's a part on the ballot to eliminate the Electoral College.
Are you able to vote with your record?
Yes, sir. This is my first election I've ever voted in, ever.
Ah, well, good for you.
Yep. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I was back on the East Coast. My grandma died. It sucked. It was family all together. But I'm good, you know. It's like coronavirus time. You know how it is.
Oh, my God. I have one thing to conclude.
Shoot.
Okay. So when my mother passed away, she had an exact amount of money in her bank account to pay me back the money she borrowed from me. My brother stole my inheritance. Okay? So he stole $55,000 from me. I tried to go after him with a lawyer, take him to court, yada, yada, yada. Well, now my mother, it turns out, when she had her surgery that took out her colon cancer, she was on welfare. So now the state, the county, and the city are going back for that money that my brother took. So I would have never got the money anyway. But now my brother is fucked because he took the money and they want the money back. Karma's a bitch. Karma's a bitch.
Nothing's ever normal in the world of Weis, I don't feel like. But you're not strung out, and that's all that matters.
I know, and Keep texting me, man, because you keep me alive.
Well, don't say that, because then if you die, then I'll feel like, oh, I didn't text him and he died. That sucks.
Well, that would be your fault. Maybe you should get a different plan. Hey, thanks, Mike. Thanks for everything.
Now it's time for me to take a sponsor break, and my first sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing the Northwest's best beer and supporting all things ski, snowboard, and bike since 2006. When I say their beer is the best, I really mean that. Recently, I've been drinking Nature Calls Mountain IPA, and not only does it have the best name in beer, a portion of the proceeds benefits the Conservation Alliance, so it does make a difference. And as far as supporting action sports, no other beer comes close to what 10 Barrel does for ski, snowboard, and bike. Next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of 10 Barrel and support the beer that supports the sports we love, the 10 Barrel Brewery. My next sponsor is Stanley. You know, the brand that has been around for over 100 years, the ones that invented that keep things hot and keep things cold category. Back in the day, you could count on your grandpa's green Stanley to keep the hot chocolate, soups, and so much more hot. Well, these days, Stanley still makes that same green bottle, and they also make so many more products that will keep your liquids hotter and colder for a couple hours longer than any other product on the market. You know I think you deserve the best for less, and I'm going to make that happen again at Stanley. To save 30% on all Stanley products, head on over to stanley-pmi.com, go shopping, head to checkout, enter the code drinkfast, that's all one word, all lowercase, and you're good to go. You'll save 30%. My last sponsor in this sponsor break is my first ever ski sponsor, Elan Skis. They make handcrafted skis in Slovenia's Julian Alps, and they have a serious history, like 75 years of history. Seriously, this is their 75th anniversary of making world-class skis with innovative technology that makes skiing better for everyone. And with Elan, it's all about experience, and they are as authentic as it gets. Whether you're heading out on a backcountry adventure with your bros, on a trip to the local hill with your family, or enjoying après with your friends, the experience is what matters. And with Elan, that experience is always good times. You can find out more about the Ripstick, which is shipping to my house right now, Glen Plake, and everything else Elan over at elanskis.com. Those are my sponsors. Let's jump back into the podcast. So there are so many things to think here. First, Ben wants to have kids, and while I think he should have a ton of them, maybe in the COVID time of hate, he should just hold off a while. I know his wife wants kids too, so who am I to suggest that they shouldn't have them? I do know that if Ben called me out of the blue and asked me if he should get a dog, I would say no, and I would have reasons like they're expensive, you would have no time to yourself, if you relapse, what happens to a dog? So that's a dog. Who knows what will happen with a kid? But hopefully Ben is on the straight and narrow, or clean and narrow, or whatever anybody says in that situation. Hopefully he's off drugs and alcohol. So hopefully he will be able to say clean, and Ben and John both made my 200th episode. So that was catching up from a few guests from the past that you all had a lot of feedback on. But now it is time for my 200th episode, and my guest this week is truly worthy of episode 200. Like my 100th guest Tanner Hall had at the time, Henrik Harlaut now has more X Games medals than any other skier in history. But whatever, that's what Henrik does. We expect him to blow minds at contests with tricks that are unfathomable and a unique signature style that we haven't seen in the contest game in forever. We expect Henrik to shout out the Wu-Tang, wearing his Quad XL clothing and a big smile all the time. But do we really know him? No. So it was time to get to know him. And while I was sitting in an embassy suites in Washington, D.C., getting ready to interview Henrik 24 hours after my grandmother had passed away, and I'll always say that because I want you to feel bad for me, and she was an amazing person. But anyways, this is a big interview. I'm sitting in this hotel, and it wasn't easy to get Henrik's time. I've tried a bunch over the years. And he was going to be with his agent. I think they're in Andorra. And I've already had to send his agent audio files for Inappropriate Questions because when I traveled across the country to see my grandmother, I forgot my iPad in Seattle, so I did not have that with me. So I was kind of in a rush and scramble when I sent him these files right before the podcast, so he knows I'm a little bit frazzled. And then I call in, I get Henrik on the line, and through my headphones, I hear absolutely nothing. I can see the audio is recording, but my headphones aren't picking up any sound. And I'm no sound engineer. I mess around with the dials for a few minutes, and then I tell Henrik that I think I'm having a headphone problem, and I'm going to run to Best Buy and call him in 10 minutes. I think he thinks I'm crazy, that I'm actually going to leave a hotel, get to a Best Buy, buy some headphones, get back to the hotel, and call him within 10 minutes. But Best Buy is in the hotel parking lot. So I sprint to Best Buy, I buy a cheap pair of headphones, and I'm not sure what was going on because my badass Skull Candy headphones still do work, and I'm using them on the podcast right now. But something was going on then, I couldn't figure it out, and I was freaking out. So I got these pair of cheap-ass headphones, and they got me through it. So I get my shit together as much as I can, and without further ado, we will jump into a chat with arguably the best skier in modern times, Henrik Harlaut. Henrik Harlaut! Bah, bah, bah!
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. Oh, man.
Well done.
I was really upset. Sorry about that, man. That's like a first for me.
Yeah, no worries.
That was quick, though. I went to Best Buy, bought headphones, and I'm already back.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but I think you're cool with it, and I'll jump into our podcast. Salute. Is it one of those projects where you have all these guys in it, Cam, Clayton, Carl, Sammy, and it's like you got the best dudes in urban, you got the best dudes in backcountry, and is it, hey, I'm going to showcase every side of my skiing, which is pretty much what I've done my whole career anyway?
Yeah, definitely. And also a lot just because my last project, the regiment, was basically just about me and had one cameo shot of one of my good friends from Sweden, Morten Great. But I really, really enjoy skiing with a lot of people, and I enjoy watching movies with more people than just one person. So already going into this project, I knew I wanted to have more of a crew feel in this one. And then I was just super fortunate to get to link up with a lot of people that I actually haven't really been shooting with before, but I've had good relationship with, and they are really good friends and that I look up to. So it's different because of that for sure. And I'm so happy that everybody was able to take their time and film with me and the crew.
I've gotten to know the Step crew over the years, and what I found interesting about those dudes is they find some of the gnarliest features, they put in a ton of time, they break themselves over and over until they get their clip, and when they get their clip, it's almost like relief. When I see you get something, it's so much juice and you're so stoked and fired up, and with them, it's almost like relief where they're like, we got our trick, people are going to understand how ridiculously technical or hard this was. But when you get put into the mix with the Step crew, are you able to lighten things up a little bit just by your vibe and attitude?
Yeah, I think the vibe and the attitude while we were shooting in the streets was like super great and positive. And I think it was a great relief for Cam and Clayton as well, because they did a lot of Step movies and then had like 2-3 years that they've been shooting with TGR, but I don't know, it seemed like they were like really hyped about getting back out in the streets with a crew that, yeah, I don't know exactly what it was, but yeah, I could definitely feel that they were really hyped to be out in the streets with me and the crew, and same was I, and that was just awesome. So definitely the vibe was maybe a little bit different than what it was back in their last movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was just all appreciations.
You've always had the street skiing, but where you've really excelled, at least in the contest realm, is in the park. You've blown minds, you've won countless X Games medals. So I'm sure in the park there's no fear anymore. It's like when you line up for a park jump, it's all confidence in your head. You know exactly how your body's going to rotate in the air, and 99.9% of the time you're going to land your trick, unless you're doing something that you've never done before. Does it get to that point now when you're in the park where everything is natural and there is no fear? You know you're going to land. It's that supreme confidence?
Yes and no. Like certain tricks, obviously, that I was afraid of and was fearing in the past that I have overcome are definitely less scary these days. But for sure, I get a lot of adrenaline and definitely a bit of fear before trying something that I haven't mastered yet, and definitely when doing stuff that are a bit of my weaknesses. But yeah, I never afraid to really go against that fear or to challenge it or whatever you say.
Yeah, to try at least. But then you look at another realm of your skiing in this movie. I mean, I haven't seen it, obviously, but there's Carl in there, there's Sammy in there, there's going to be a lot of backcountry as well. You can get broken off just as easily in the backcountry as you can in the park and in urban. What is more scary for you? I mean, people use the term puckered, and do you get puckered in any situation? Is there something scary to your life on skis?
I get scared, but I also know that this is like what I master the best in my life. So I definitely have a lot of confidence, and so I commit to what I believe I can achieve. But for sure, backcountry and urbans is definitely where I put my skills to test, I guess. Like urbans, I used to grow up and doing a lot of urbans, and me and my friend group would always say that you don't really have a trick dialed until you can do it on a urban feature.
Yep.
So when I learned like 270s from like a urban style takeoff, I remember like thinking that I didn't have it dialed until I did it on my first street rail. And sort of similar like that with backcountry as well. Like if I can't do it in backcountry, I don't think I have yet mastered that particular trick yet. And like with backcountry, it can be so scary because of the fact that you basically want to try whatever you're going to try the first hit or second hit. And that can always be a little bit scary, like when you're on top and you don't really know the speed and stuff like that. So there's many aspects that are scary other than just the trick factor. And urban, similar like that, like urban, depending on the feature, but you can gradually like work your way up to the trick. But there is usually a lot of things that are way scarier in the streets as well. Like stuff that you don't even see on film, where it's slow speed, pole in the landing, or it can be anything.
When you think about getting a trick and people don't understand how many times it takes, and there's tricks that take 100 times to get, it might not happen with you. I mean, you're one of those dudes that is super talented. Do you have those tricks that you're trying to get where you have 50 tries, or are you able to get it before then?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely, I had sessions where it doesn't come as easy as I would have liked it to.
Right.
But then it can also be often sessions where I get the trick, but it's not up to like my expectation of the way I want the trick to look like. So I can try it over and over, even like get it 10 times in a row, and it hasn't been the right one yet.
You don't like how your arms are hanging, or you don't want to put that out to the public because that's not what you think is cool?
Exactly. And especially with like film skiing, or like when filming for a movie part, that's the advantage and the coolest part about it, I think, is that you create an art piece in a way. So you want everything to be exactly the way you envisioned it to be like.
Is that why you do 2-year projects? Because you're the king of the 2-year project, it seems like. I think you've done like 3 of them. And is it just that you're too busy to get a shit ton of clips in one season? Or is it the make it perfect mentality means that it's going to take 2 years to get enough clips to have a movie?
Definitely more the second one that you said. Like, I don't have so much issue with stack enough footage. But at this point, I've like done a lot of segments already, and I'd like to try get them better and better each one. So it's just to have enough time to really put out something that's like meaningful and powerful to myself, even that I can be satisfied with, that I believe was better than what I did before. In the time to really produce something that will make an impact in a way.
I can imagine there's clips that have come out in projects before that you look back at now that you're bummed that the clip's in a movie. Where you're like, I just don't like how I look, and I wish they would have used it this way or this clip because I did it better. And it seems like you have, and you and Phil Casabon as well, a make it perfect mentality where if it's not up to your standards, no one in the world is going to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have the movie about to come out, and before we get into your life and times, everything has changed with this whole coronavirus thing. And you live in tiny Andorra. It's a little place between Spain and France. It's known for skiing and tobacco and having ridiculously low taxes. What is life like in the pandemic over there? Is it all masks and not going out at all?
Yeah, it's definitely pretty strict. I wasn't in Andorra during the heaviest part of it.
Okay.
But I got back in end of June. It's definitely, you have mask, and I don't see so much the difference because usually I'm pretty much on my own. I have my really good friend Noah Albaladejo, who's an amazing skier as well. We hang out a lot, and the Spanish team. But other than that, I don't see so many people, and I do my stuff a lot on my own, like a lot of activities, and don't see so many people. So I don't drink alcohol or anything like that. So I never really go to bars or any public places like that. So I haven't been super affected more than just having to wear a mask every time I go grocery shopping.
Okay. And it's funny that you say you don't drink alcohol. That's great. You're an athlete. You shouldn't drink alcohol, or if you do, you should do it in moderation. But I would think that in doing some research on you, it sounds like your parents come from the champagne business. And is there a line of champagne in the Harlaut family?
Yeah, there is actually. Like my father on his side of the family, they're from France, and his cousin has a big vineyard or champagne yard in Champagne, where they've been doing champagne since 1800 something. And yeah, so it's within the family for sure. And even when I was baptized with champagne on my tongue, because that's like something in our family. So it's definitely been with me from the very beginning.
That's funny. And I would think in that business, there's a lot of celebration, because I think of champagne as people spraying it everywhere. And while this doesn't fit in the timeline at all of your life and times, when I think of athletes of your caliber, ones who win a lot, bottles are popped and they are sprayed everywhere. Me personally, I'm a loser, and I've never popped a bottle and sprayed it on people because I've never won anything. But you have. Do you have like a memorable experience spraying champagne in life?
I think I've actually only sprayed the champagne one time in my life, and it was at X Games in Hafjell 2017. And that time I sprayed my champagne. But other than that, I usually never actually pop it and spray it. I either save it and give to my friends, or back when I did drink, sometimes I would celebrate with it. But yeah, it's just something I think that my father taught me from the beginning, because of how much work there's been put into making that champagne. And I never really understood the point of spraying it, because it's kind of a waste, definitely. And then also, I think just growing up and seeing a lot of people trying to flex or like look cool with that, I wanted to be the opposite and not be the guy that's spraying the champagne. And yeah, just my rebellious mind or something, I think.
No, I get it. You don't want to be like some of the other people. And I would have sprayed the champagne at least once as well, just because I've never done it. But your parents are in the alcohol business, and were they athletes when they were younger as well?
Yeah, they definitely done a lot of sports, and always growing up, they would go with me and teach me in the beginning, but they never were professionals or anything like that. Like their occupation or their jobs wasn't ever within sports.
Sure.
But yeah, they always been very sport influenced, and yeah, went over on me.
And then I think you have two brothers, and are they pretty athletic?
Yep, two older brothers, and yeah, like you say, both are very athletic and love sports as well. So it was very easy for me as the younger brother to just hop on and follow what they were doing.
And you have a legendary work ethic that people talk about, where, you know, everybody sees you on the podium everywhere and sees how well you ski in your video parts. But what they don't see is the work you put in, and it's probably 8 hours a day when it's not ski season that we don't see. and it's time on the bike, time in the gym, time at the skate park, time running, time doing crazy exercises. Does that all start because you have two older brothers who are great athletes and you have to chase them to even hang?
Yeah, probably started somewhat in that way. Like I definitely had to keep up with them, try to at least when I was younger. But I think it's just been my goal in life. Like ever since I was very young, I knew I wanted to do something within sports. Like I loved being outside. I hated going inside to eat lunch or dinner. And having mom telling me to digest for 30 minutes after eating. Like all I ever wanted to do was always just be out and try work to reach whatever my dream was at the time.
Now it's time to jump into my final set of sponsors, and winter is almost here. And you know what everyone needs? A beanie. Everyone needs one, even if you don't ski or snowboard, and warmth is super important. But you know what is just as important as warmth? Style. You don't want to look like an idiot out there when you don't have to. And Cole Headwear is going to make sure you don't look like an idiot because they have the best fits and styles out there. That's why 9 out of 10 beanie wearers that I talked to said that Cole is the best. And now you can experience the style and warmth of Cole without paying full pop. I'm going to save you 15%. And all you need to do is head on over to coleheadwear.com, go shopping, and when you check out, enter the code POWEL15 to save 15% off your entire order. Last but not least is Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. For over 60 years, they have been getting people on the snow, in the water, and on the pavement. Not only have they provided a great retail experience, they also play against the big internet guys. Over on their website, peterglenn.com, you'll find great brands, great products, and deals. Peter Glenn also offers shipping on orders over $49. They'll match the price found at other websites. If you need something ski, snowboard, wakeboard, or inline skate related, head on over to peterglenn.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. And you've had different dreams over the times. It started with hockey. You were going to be the next Peter Forsberg. And that lasted till you were 9-ish. I think you were also a slalom skier. And in your young life, you grew up in Stockholm?
Yeah, correct. And yeah, exactly. Like I would snap onto so many different sports and always just looking at like who was the best guy in that sport and trying to become that person basically. And I've always been very, very inspired. And yeah, I definitely had a lot of dreams to become hockey player, soccer player, alpine racer, and pretty much anything that I tried, I was like, oh, I want to become a professional at this. But then once I got introduced to free skiing, that was just beyond all of the others because it fitted me so well with your own schedule in general. Like I was saying, like I always wanted to be outside and try to shoot puck at a hockey goal or anything. But with hockey and soccer and all these other sports, it was like scheduled practice. So it was 2 practice a week and then a game in the weekend or race in the weekend for alpine racing. But with free skiing, there was no schedule. It was just go as long as I got the energy and the motivation, I could go for as long as I wanted to. And that was like, I think what hooked me so much to it.
Yeah, well, by the time you get to be 9-ish, I think, the family moves up to Ora, and is the goal to get you and your brothers in the mountains and focus more on skiing?
No, not necessarily the goal. It was actually because my oldest brother, Philip, was starting the Alpine Racing Ski Academy. And we always would go up on like the winter vacation and like stuff like that and go up and ski because we really enjoyed skiing, but didn't really think about it too much like that. But yeah, my oldest brother was starting school up there, and then my family just saw the opportunity to go with him because it was 8 hours north of Stockholm.
Okay.
He could live at home the first year, and yeah, we were just gonna live there for 1 year originally while he was like getting settled in the new environment. And us also, like our whole family loved skiing, like I was saying, and it sounded like an awesome idea. But yeah, the original plan was just to live there for 1 year, but then we all just fell in love way too much with it and then was never able to move back.
And at this time, I think it's when you're still ski racing when you get there. And these days, and pretty much forever in your whole life, it seems like you've been known for being the most stoked skier on the planet, just so in love with everything that has to do with skiing. Back then, did you have that same passion for slalom and banging gates?
Kinda, but I think I had a little bit more, like right when I moved up to Åre at least, my passion was a little bit stronger still for hockey. Alpine racing was super, super wicked and I loved it. And when I was skiing, it was the best ever and I tried to do it as much as I could, but I was still like hockey daydreaming at all times at that point, I think.
Okay. And then there are a ton of reasons why people leave the world of racing. And I don't think there's really a full-on reason for you, but at this time, I think you're 10-ish when you meet Jakob Webster. It's like 2000-ish, and he shows you some ski videos, and he blows your mind with them. Is that kind of how the story goes, where he's the one who kind of introduces you to the culture that you don't know about yet?
Yeah, correct. It was super wicked, because this was after 1 year of living in Åre, and then in the fall time, so it's like in October, my slalom team, or the team that I was racing for in Stockholm, was going down to Italy for a race camp. And I still had good connection, and the Åre team wasn't going anywhere in that fall time. So I was able to go together with the Alpine team down to Italy, where we drove for 2 days in a bus to go down there. And Jakob is from the same resort in Stockholm. And I had seen free skiing and freestyle skiing a little bit while living that first year in Åre, but hadn't really been fully hooked on it yet. But I thought it was the coolest sport ever. Then on that 2-day bus drive, that's when I got to meet him. And then for 2 days, we just talked about skiing, and he told me all about how cool this sport is. And we watched some ski movies, and yeah, that was basically it. And then one day after the Alpine race practice, I was allowed to leave a little bit earlier to go, because he had built his own little jump into some powder snow. And he told me I have to, or basically already on the bus drive, he told me that on this trip I have to learn how to do a backflip. And this was kind of crazy, because in 2000s, people didn't really have trampolines. I think it was like the summer after this, people started getting their own trampolines. So I don't believe that I had ever done a backflip of any kind yet in my life.
And you're going to learn it on snow.
And then he was like, you have to learn it on snow on this trip. And I was like, okay, you tell me this. And then, yeah, I was allowed to go leave the race course a little bit earlier and go join him. And I tried it twice, once to my stomach and once to my knees. And then the day was over. And then the very last day, I got 30 minutes at the end of the day to go join him again. And then he told me it's now or never, kind of. And I did it backslap, but rode out of it. And that was like the biggest joy and happiness that I had ever experienced in my life up until that point. And it was crazy.
And is that like when your Grom days begin, like that backslap out of it and the feeling that you get like, holy shit, skiing is something totally different for me now. And you get totally immersed in the culture, like buying videos and watching them until the tapes wear out. Is that right around when that starts for you?
Oh yeah, 100%. But it was crazy too, because it was before people had like cameras or could film really. Like I had one person, a friend of my brother that was there, and he took a photo of me doing the backflip. It was all white out, and I remember he sent it to me when I got home, and then I printed it out and I brought it to school to tell my friends that I had learned backflip, but nobody believed me. And since it was all white out, you couldn't really see anything, and people would turn it upside down and tell me that like, nah, you didn't do backflip. And yeah, so nobody really believed me, because at the time too, doing a backflip was like pretty impressive. I didn't know like a single skier that could do a backflip, and I was only 10 years old, and I was like, I learned how to do a backflip. But what is crazy too, so this was in the fall time, and then that whole season, all of my friends the whole time was like, show me you can do this backflip thing.
Yeah.
And I was always way too scared to try it. And I was like, no, this is not the right day. And I would do other tricks that was like kind of impressive, but never the backflip. But then in middle of April or like late season, Jakob Webster came up to Åre and got to the park. And the first thing he said to me was, or one of the first things he said to me was, asked if I had done more backflips. And I was like, no. And then he was like, okay, so you're going to have to do one right now. And then I did it right in front of all my friends. And they're like, what? And I was like, I told you for a few months that I had done it. But that was like when I got to show finally all my friends that I had done it, that it wasn't a lie, that I had done a backflip. And just to have Jakob there again to like boost my confidence was like crazy. And it was crazy like that. Like every time Jakob would come up to Åre the first few years, that was always when I would learn new tricks and I would ski the best, because he was like the mentor, the idol, the one that I wanted to impress. And he was so good at putting confidence into you. He was like Tanner.
It was weird with him because I would see him a lot on the contest circuit back then. And he was always like the best looking skier out there. I feel like him and Yoon just had like a supermodel look to them. But after skiing, he'd be on the hill all day. Then he would go sit in a corner on his computer and probably create a shit ton of content because he was really good at that for a while. And it seemed like he was quiet, but maybe that was because we didn't speak the same language and he was totally different with people from other places. He seemed quiet to me, but to you, it seems like he's the dude who's driving you and giving you confidence and making who you are in the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. I remember people from Åre, like the other good skiers that were a little bit older, wasn't the biggest fan of Jakob. I remember a lot of people wasn't too stoked on him. I think it was probably jealousy, because everybody was like always kind of down talking his skiing, and I was always the one like, I would never ever say anything bad about Jakob, and I was always trying to back him, but then everybody would be like, this guy is so much better. Jakob is just overhyped and overrated. But later, he showed that he was the boss.
Yeah, for sure. But at that point, you're watching videos. You're probably learning English through the lens of Johnny DeCesare. And what parts stood out for you, and who were the early influences on your skiing?
Basically, the whole propaganda from Poor Boys Productions was like a crazy influence. Because that was the first ski movie that I bought that was more freestyle orientated, or like even park. Because before that, I had seen a lot of Swedish movies where it would be one or two segments from like Jon Olson and Henrik Winstedt, and then whoever was the up and comer from Sweden. But then it was maybe 10 segments of big mountain backcountry skiing, which wasn't as appealing and interesting to me. So when propaganda came, I remember being so blown away, and I brought my friends back home to my spot to watch it on the VHS. And I remember exactly what part, after like probably like 30 seconds of JP Auclair opening segment, both my two friends were like, oh, can I borrow this movie? Can I borrow this movie? And I like started bugging out, and I was like, no, let me at least have it for a week and study it or whatever I was going to do. So I remember propaganda was like crazy like that. And that introduced me to all of it. And then obviously like first inspirations was like Jakob, Jon Olson, Henrik Winstedt, Niklas Karlström, and some other local Swedish guys. But then when propaganda came and the other international movies, Tanner Hall was like the big influence that caught me right away. Like what I was talking about before, like I always like looked at who I thought was like the very best at the sport I wanted to pursue, that I was gonna try imitate. And Tanner was that in free skiing for me.
And is that how the style and the music and everything that kind of became who you are? Does that all start with Tanner and kind of what he was doing back then before anybody was doing that?
Yeah, very much from Tanner. But then obviously like Mikkel Deschno was also like a crazy big inspiration to me. And then, yeah, because of their style, it like rubbed off on me, and I started really loving hip hop music and just the baggy look. So then whenever I was watching a skateboard movie, because I was really into skateboarding as well, every time it was a person with a hip hop song or like that had that baggy outfit, that was always my favorite. So skiing, snowboarding, skateboarding, always like the hip hop feel was what caught my attention the most, for sure.
Was there any rollerblading in your upbringing? I think Phil Casabon had some in his, and it kind of makes sense in just the motions and movements that you're doing. But a lot of times skiers don't have any background on rollerblades. How about you?
Yes, I did quite a lot of rollerblading myself, but I never really had any rollerblade movies that I was watching. It was like one guy that was 1 year older than me, Blaze Bramwell, that was really good at skiing as well. And he was like a very cool and awesome dude too. So I looked up to him a lot, and he was rollerblading. So that was kind of who I was inspired by to start doing that. But I never really had like a professional rollerblader that I was really looking up to at that time, because my brother was skateboarding. So we would always watch skateboard movies together. But I definitely did a lot of rollerblading growing up, and I think it has helped for sure.
Just seems like the motions would be very similar. But when I think about that time when you were younger, I was around Sean Pettit a lot when he was young, and he's only, I think, like maybe a year older than you or something like that?
You're younger.
You're younger than you, okay.
Kai is 1 year older.
Okay. You know, around Sean, he was like the little kid that when anyone saw him ski, their mind was absolutely blown. They recognized how good he was, and all the pros in the US and North America wanted to be around to watch what the little kid was going to do because it was so exciting. And I look at you as like the exact same phenomenon in Europe. Could you feel things starting to come together with like the older guys really taking interest into what you're doing?
Yes, very much. And I have to like give so much thanks and appreciation to Tanner and Iberg for putting Sean Pettit and Kai Peterson in Dubski 106. Because when I saw that, because I was like I was saying, the age right in between Sean and Kai.
They were little kids then.
Yeah, and I saw them in the big movies together with Tanner, Mikkel, Shoya, CR, and all these guys. I was definitely like so jealous of them. It like made me want to work so much harder, because I was like, I want to become as good as Sean and Kai, because that was like the first two I could kind of relate to, because at the time I was only like 12, I think, when Dubski came out, turning 13. And it was hard to compare my skiing to Mikkel and Tanner, but Sean and Kai, it was so amazing to have them, and definitely being like competitive. Like I always been very competitive. I was like, I want to show everybody that. At the time, for sure, I was thinking like, I'm better than Sean and Kai. Yeah. Like little kid style.
But I think the one difference between you, and I can say Sean, I don't know Kai as well, but I do know him. But I think the big difference is the work ethic between you guys, because Sean, everything seemed to come very natural to him. And while he did ski as much as he possibly could, but I don't see him doing the things I read about you doing. Spending that time on the bike, spending the time in the gym. And the work ethic that you've always had, you might have to have had it because you're in Europe. And Sean and Kai, they were Canadian. So if they were American, it would have been even easier for them to be more popular. Did you ever feel like at any point in your career that being from Europe was not helping you out as much as it should be?
Yeah, for sure. But that was just kind of the formula, and it was the way like you first make it through Europe and get your name, and then once you're good enough to qualify, that's when you go over to America. And that was like where the NHL was, so like the real league, where it was really happening. If you were good, you were in America. So I definitely knew that like I had to get my way to America if I was gonna ever succeed with this.
The way that you really start succeeding, or really one of the big events for you in the beginning, is I think you're around 13 and you get the invite to the Olson Invitational. That is like got to be a dream come true. I mean, you get the keys to the city, and everyone who is anyone in skiing wants to be at this event, and only 10% of those people get to go. You're at this event too. Was this the first game-changing event that you're invited to?
Yeah, for sure. And it was so big and crazy. And also, for the full story, kind of, it was the second year of Olson Invitational that I got invited to be part of. And the first year of Olson Invitational, one of my classmates, Oscar Sherlin, was invited. And so I was so jealous of him, of course. Like, he got to be in the JOI and film for Teddy Bear Crisis, and he was getting so much attention as well.
That's like my favorite movie too, I will say that.
Yeah, and it made me want to work so hard, because I knew I had to, because I wasn't in it, and all the other ones were in it, and everybody was talking about him. And in my opinion, or in my mind at the time, I was like as good as him, or probably in my mind, I was thinking I was probably better than him.
Sure.
But yeah, so then I got to go to US Open the year after, and US Open was crazy at the time. I remember qualification was a few hundred, like 100 people in each heat, and I think only 2 person qualified to semifinals.
It's crazy.
And I won the qualification, and I made it into semifinals, and semifinals was where all the pros were invited to, and then whoever could make it from semifinals to finals was crazy. And I put down like one of my best runs ever in semifinals with switch 1260 on the last jump. And this was like the same year that TJ did the switch 1440. So switch 12 at that time, and being only 14 was crazy. So
yeah.
It caught a lot of attention, as well as Yoon. I didn't make it to finals because the rest of the run was probably not as good, and everybody that made finals was like in X Games.
They'd all gone through puberty.
Yeah. But that night, Yoon Olson came to me the same as the semifinal and was like, anybody that can do a run like that deserves to be in my competitions. I would love if you could be a part of it. And yeah, I was so stoked. Even though it only had been like 1 year, or like not even a year since my friend Oscar had been invited to the other one, it felt like eternity. Like I had been waiting for my chance, and I had been working. And I was so happy to get the recognition that I was going to be able to go to the second edition of JY.
And there you not only get to ski with amazing skiers and see just like what that lifestyle is on the A list of what's going on, especially the way that Yoon ran those things. It was absolutely ridiculous. And in year 2, I'm sure it was really dialed. But you end up connecting with the dudes at Armada there. And it should be like amazing. You should be on the brand that you're supposed to be on from day one. And you leave the Yoon thinking you're going to end up with a package from Armada. And you do end up with a package from Armada. But somehow you sign a contract with Scott in between there and end up on Scott. What happens?
That's so awesome. You know this story? I haven't got to tell this story, maybe never really ever, but yeah, that's it. I was at JOI, and I got to talk first to the Norwegian Armada manager and then Chris O'Connell. And I talked to them, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to send you a package. And I was so hyped. And then for like 2 or 3 weeks, I was in school, and I was telling my friends at first, like, wow, I've been talking with Armada. They're going to send me some gear. But the package didn't arrive for like a month and a half. So my friends and my brother's friends, because I let everybody know about it, they all told me that they had just been joking with me, and like, of course I'm not going to get on Armada. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is like right when Armada is being started. So then I had been skiing for Scott because we knew the person working there. But then they come to me, and they had a deal to sign like a actual contract. And then I was like, thinking about it, I remember talking to my father. I was like, maybe this Armada package is going to arrive. And he was like, oh, we maybe wait a little bit. And we waited. And then I signed the contract, And then the day after, I remember my father was like, I have maybe some news that you maybe not going to like. And he's like, there arrived a package in the mail today, and it's some skis, some hoodies, and all this Armada. And I was like, no. I really couldn't believe it. And I was like so sad. But then I remember my father was like, all right, we'll contact the guys and try send it back to them as a gesture or whatever you say.
Yeah, like good faith.
To be nice. So hopefully for the future, because he knew like I had written Armada, probably spray painted my skis and wrote Armada on them because I loved Armada and all my favorites was on Armada. And he knew that I hopefully was going to get on Armada, but he was like, yeah, let's send this care package back to them and hopefully they still happy and one day you can get on it. So that's what we did.
So that's a bummer, and you end up on Scott skis, and it's like you go from being on what everybody thinks is the coolest brand in skiing, which is Armada at that point. All the legends of the sport are there at that point. And you end up on Scott, which has, I don't think anyone. Does Scott have anyone at that point? Because Wallace comes on, but I don't think it's at that time.
There was a few riders that was on the goggles. I can remember Chris Turpin and some other people was on Scott goggles, but nobody on the skis except Laurent Favre from France. And he was a big, big inspiration as well. Him also having the hip hop baggy style and like that influence. So I got to know Laurent at an early age. So being with him on the team was also very awesome. And I'm very grateful for all the times that I was on Scott still. But like you say, it could have been Armada with Tanner, Boyd, JF, Julian, JP, like Anthony, all of these guys. Like it could have been being on the dream team. But in a way, now after, I think it wasn't a bad thing that I didn't get on it at that time because it made me hungry and made me keep dreaming about one day getting on it instead of like getting it already at 13 or 14.
Yeah, I mean, because the next decision you make for a brand is another unique one for me because it's time for you to start blowing up as a skier, I feel like, by the time you're 15, 16, 17 years old. And instead of going to a big brand, you end up going to Ninthward.
Yeah.
While they had some cool shit going on, they had Rory Silva on their program, they had you on they had some great people on the program, but it was one of those companies where it just didn't seem like anything was real. Yes, they had skis, they gave you pro models, they put some stuff out, but everyone was waiting for it to implode, and it eventually did. But what was the reasoning for going to a company like Ninthward?
Basically all Mikkel. Like I had started getting a little bit older, and I started really, really appreciating Mikkel's style and his way of skiing, and I thought Mikkel was like the coolest out of them all. Like a lot of people didn't even like him, and he was just like so different than everybody else. And he actually took me under the wing and like started helping me out because I obviously started hitting him up at first and I was telling him how inspired and how big idol he is for me. And then he started helping me, and then it was pretty obvious for me to just go to Ninthward, and it was still something I never have regretted, and I'm so happy that I did because I think it did keep me like more hungry and underground in a way at that young of an age instead of like blowing up too much at that age.
If you would have gone on any other brand, you would have been the like poster boy for their marketing, and you would have been everywhere. With Ninthward, you were that dude that everybody was talking about, but you weren't going to be seen anywhere in Ninthward, like print or Ninthward anything, because it just didn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody knew you because your style and skills were undeniable, so it didn't matter what skis you were on.
No, exactly. And my idea too, because I remember everybody was telling me before, like, don't sign with Ninthward. They don't have money. They're never going to pay you. They're never going to do this. So I was aware of that already before, or like going into it. But then my goal at all time was always just to like deliver or do well at competitions enough at least so I could keep skiing and keep doing it. So I could stay on a sponsor like Ninthward. And I thought that was so sick. It was like feeling so cool to be like that. Cause I remember Corrupt and like other companies came around and had a really big, crazy offers. My father probably hated me, but I was like, no, I'm going to stay with Ninthward because it's cooler.
I mean, at the end of the day, you could be with Corrupt and not get paid or be with Ninthward and not get paid. It didn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. For sure, it turned out like that. And like I was saying, I think it only shaped my skiing better because I knew I had to work way harder because I wasn't going to get the help that other company was going to give me at that age. So I knew, like, I always was thinking, like, I just want to get so good that nobody can really deny it. And same kind of with my crazy, like, hip hop baggy style. It was definitely not very liked and appreciated in Sweden at first. So I remember we had a freeride.se, which was like the Swedish version of New Schoolers.
Okay.
And everybody, as soon as I released a photo or video, all they could talk about was all about my clothes and thinking, even without knowing me, that I had like a bad attitude and just not a good kid at all. But then I remember always using that as fuel to like get better and start working harder because I was always like, if I'm good enough, people can't talk about that because they're going to have to talk about my skiing instead because that is on a different level. So that was like always an extra motivation. It's kind of cool that I was aware of all that already at like 15, 16 and is thinking in those loops at all times, like I have to get so good that nobody can talk.
It is pretty crazy that you were that mature to think that way. But it's also funny that, you know, you say that and it's almost true to an extent. But then you look at the Olympics in Sochi and the coverage on it. I think it was Sochi when your pants didn't fall down. They just do what they do. But you're wearing quad XL pants with suspenders. And when your jacket comes up, people are like, his pants fell down. And you probably got more press from that and the Wu-Tang shit than almost anything you've ever done in your career. And it's not even like you podium there. It's just people wanted to comment on your clothing, which is funny.
Right. I kind of knew it and I embraced all that. I definitely didn't know they was going to cut on like that crazy, but I just remember thinking a lot, like so many people was not super happy with skiing going to Olympics and like was thinking that all the core and the raw feeling of free skiing was going to disappear right away when Olympics came around. And I wanted to be an example of not that. So I definitely embraced like trying to be more odd than a normal athlete at the Olympics. I wanted to like have the big dreadlocks, have the baggy clothing, have and look very different than a normal athlete at Olympics. And yeah, it motivated me, but I did not think at all it was going to go as crazy as it did.
It's funny because it was so much press. And if you look at it on the grand stage of contests, and we're not really going to talk about your contests or video parts because we're like an hour into this podcast and we haven't talked about shit yet. So we're just going to talk about life and times kind of stuff. But if you look at it, it's the biggest stage that you're ever on in your life. Both Olympics that you're at, you don't have your best days, so that kind of sucks for you, unfortunately. Yeah. But you get more press than anything because of your pants, which is crazy.
Yeah. I wish it wasn't like that, to be honest. At least it was that and not something else. But yeah, I wish it was my skiing that would get a lot of the press. But yeah, hopefully for this next one or the one after that or the one after that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at it as when you eventually get on that podium and have gold, they're still going to talk about your pants, which is going to be crazy. You're going to be like, hey, I always thought if I got good enough that you wouldn't talk about my pants anymore. And now I'm the best in the world and you're talking about my pants. But that's just how the media is always going to be. I don't think you can ever predict what they do. But we were talking a little bit about sponsors and you got back on Armada, which is great. You got on Armada finally, which is amazing. Who else is paying the bills for you these days?
Right now, I'm also sponsored by Monster Energy, Oakley Eyewear and Helmet, MIPS protection in the helmet, Flaxtab back protector, full tilt boots, look bindings, blue tomato, and then also right now me and my brother have started our own clothing company, which is Harlaut Apparel, but they doesn't really pay me right now. Like I'm more investing in it than getting something out of it, but it's probably my favorite one still.
Well, right now I saw you've launched your storefront, and that looks like you've done a really great job with that, and the clothing looks great. My question in launching your own clothing brand is, when your product is something that you wear in a quad XL, do you make a lot of quad XLs, or do you kind of scale it back to make clothing for the masses and then have a limited amount of the shit that you wear?
Definitely, you have to tell yourself that, like, this is what I want to do, which can be kind of crazy with like a lot of influences around and everything, because I am in a stage in my career where I could sign with a clothing company and get a pretty good paycheck probably.
Yeah, it's a good one to have.
But that has never really been my motivation or my intention. Like, I think it's so fun of an adventure and experience to try do one of my dreams. Because already at a young age, me and my brother would always create our own companies that would sponsor our own skateboard movies and ski videos that would make in like textile class in school. So it was always a dream to like have our own brand. And now also, since I am so particular with the clothes I am wearing, the way they look and everything, so it's awesome to just basically do the clothes that I want to wear. And the response from it have surprisingly been so amazing. Like, I thought for a while for sure, and I think it was like that, like the whole baggy look had definitely died out a lot.
It got a little tighter for a little bit?
Yeah, very much. But right now, I think it is in general in fashion, in skateboarding, everything like that, you see a lot more of the baggy coming back. And I think we hitting a perfect timing right now with Harlaut Apparel. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, every release that we have done so far have outdone the previous one, and the support is amazing. And yeah, back to like, it's definitely not amazing enough to make up for what I probably could make from a clothing company that is established, but it's almost like people showing love directly to me, and obviously like the whole crew and team that's on it. But yeah, the love that we get from it and the feeling is beyond any paycheck, and I much rather have that than a bigger number in my bank account.
I would think if you had a clothing sponsor, you could probably get between 50 and 100 grand just from having the outerwear sponsor. So you don't have that, but in doing what you're doing and the sponsors that you have, and then the contests that you win, I would think, and I'd like to ask about money just because kids don't know what can you really make as being a pro skier. Now, I don't want to go into actual dollars of exactly what you make, but someone of your caliber being the best in the world, in my opinion, for what you are doing, I mean, can you make almost $500,000 a year?
I think you probably can, but if I'm going to be completely honest, one of the craziest thing is that I don't have any idea how much money I make or how much money I have even in the account. Everything I know is that I have enough money to do what I'm doing, and that's like my focus. I kind of hate money, and I hate the way money directs everything in life and the whole world and everything like that, but that's never been like my focus. And luckily, I'm so thankful and appreciative, and I can't believe even that I'm even able to be at this level where I don't have to be too concerned with how much I'm making or how much I have. So I don't really have the answer to your question, but all I know is that I just love skiing way more than I love any dollar bill.
Well, it's amazing that you have that kind of attitude. It's refreshing. And I think another person that has a refreshing attitude in skiing is someone you meet in about 2007. You'll always be linked to him with your ski career because you both value style and just the make it perfect mentality. I'm talking about Phil Casabon.
Boy, sorry. I was just super hyped that you're talking about Phil.
You guys meet at the 2007 Araj Open. You give him props, and then you guys go to some Riders Palace, and you show Phil a picture of a Switch 9 Tindy, and he's like, holy shit, from that picture, I realized that you are fucking badass, and I'm going to be a good friend of yours. And from that point on, do you guys become almost like connected? I mean, I know there's like another rail contest in France where Phil connects with Mikhail, and he actually rooms with you. But from those two first interactions, are you guys just linked forever in life, like soulmates?
Yeah, exactly. It's like when it's so perfect that it's no forcing or anything. Like it was nothing like we tried to hang out and it wasn't like working together. We were both so into the similar style of skiing, similar style of music, similar style of clothing, and everything just clicked from that first moment. And I saw it, like when I saw him in Switzerland and Lax do the lip 2 nollie off his noses with like all denim suit. I was like, whoa, this, and has like Oakley O-frames. He has a helmet on, but the helmet is unbuckled. So it's like flapping all over. And I was like, what? It was like one of the first times I ever saw somebody with the style of like Mikhail or Laurent Tevne, but I had like the technicality of, I don't even know. I guess like Tanner was like that too, but Phil was like, wow, like where the style is even outmatching the technicality, but the tricks and the technique was like so great. But the style was beyond that even. I could not believe it, and I still can't believe I still have such a picture or video memory in my head of seeing that nollie lip 2 that he did, and yeah, it was crazy.
It's funny in talking to him how he feels the exact same way about you and how he was able to remember that picture and how it just painted everything about who you were, which kids really don't understand today. I mean, the days of still images are done almost. They're not done, but there's no magazines.
It was a sequence though.
Oh, yeah, okay. That makes a big difference.
But yeah.
We could talk about you filming with Phil. You could talk about the education, the style. There's a lot of stuff that we're not going to talk about because your career, you've done too many things. And you do things with Inspired. You win a ton of medals at X Games. I think you've won like 12 medals at X Games. And in thinking of it, when you get that first X Games medal, I think it's year 3 of going to the X Games for you. Your first year, I think you're skiing on a bad knee, and I think you get like 12th or something like that. I'm not sure. But your third time's a charm, and the X Games is the biggest dream I would think of your entire life. And when you set a goal as a kid of winning an X Games gold medal, and you actually achieve that goal, what's that feeling like when you actually have the goal and you do it? Because not too many people do.
Yeah, it's like a feeling that's almost like undescribable, I would say. Like, it was so unreal. And for it to come at that time too, because I had been very good at competitions. Like when I was 17 years old, I won European Open, Aspen Open, Monster Park Invitational, and like all these like crazy big events. And then had a knee injury when I was 18, and it kind of set me back a little bit and shift my focus to like a little bit more style influence and like all that. And then I remember 2012, while shooting for Educational Style, I started skiing really, really good. And I didn't really do so good in competition still because I had a little bit of a different look on tricks. Like I didn't want to do what was getting scored at the time, even though I could do those tricks, like a lot of them. So I could have like compromised and just done whatever was getting the points at the time.
Switch 10 truck driver?
Yeah, or it was like dub 12 mute or switch dub 10 at that time. But I remember telling my father like, I think I'm done competing because I don't really get the joy and I don't really get the recognition, and I'm doing really, really good in the film aspect. And then he was like telling me, maybe just try one more year, see how it feels. Like everything in life goes in circle and in waves. So maybe your time is going to come back next year. Who knows? Like you don't lose anything from doing it. You only gain experience and like all this. And then that coming year, I was on the podium on 14 out of 16 competitions all of a sudden. And it was the year that I won X Games. So I think it was a crazy blessing that I stayed to the competitions, and I really found the joy back again with competing and being competitive. And yeah, I have to thank a lot of people for that.
And then from there, it's like you've just dominated over the years. And the way that you do things, I think if anybody saw the knuckle huck this year, just the way that you're able to flex a ski, especially in the forefoot of that ski, that it's not even supposed to happen like that. When they design skis, they don't think about what you're doing to them. And it's just amazing what you're able to do. But in contests, there's one thing that everybody experiences, and it's the human element. There's a judging factor. It's a tough job for judges. They have about 35 seconds to a minute to figure out exactly what you did in your run to see if you grabbed everything. And your run is longer than 35 seconds to a minute. So it's like they don't even have time to watch the whole run, I feel like, although I've never been in the booth to actually see what they're actually doing. But have you had a contest before where you feel like you're supposed to be on the podium and you get totally screwed by the judges?
Yes. Unfortunately, I had that quite a lot. Especially like while those years where I wasn't doing so well, like I was saying, result-wise, I thought I was on something that should have been at all times deserved a way better placement. I remember like X Game Big Air and doing like Bio 14 Tindy that was like super raw and like flawless, and stomped it, and it got like 32 points out of 50 when Dub 12 Mute got like 44. And I remember getting the whole support from new schoolers and everybody that mattered to me in a way, like all my friends and like all my peers. Everybody was like, your stuff is better. But that's like something that I think too, like what my father taught me about the circle of life kind of thing with tricks too. Like I see a lot of people that just follow what is trendy or what is hot at the moment and try to learn that trick. And then once that trend is gone, a lot of people get so confused with like, where do I go next? Because they skipped so many steps just to get to that one point, to get that result. And that's my biggest strength, I think, that I never really looked at what other people was doing. I only like was working my own way. So I like learned so many crazy different axes and rotations, and I still do that. And that's why I think my longevity has been so great, just because I don't run out of a certain type of trick, because I have at all times like been working on another one and a different rotation.
All these rotations for you, style is key for everything that you do. If you learn a new rotation and you see it on film or video and you realize it looks kind of whack, you're not going to do that. Are there tricks where you've done them that are like super technically hard, but you realize don't look good and you won't do them in a contest?
No, not really like that. Because I definitely like meditate and like think about the trick so much beforehand that it like almost sometimes feels like I've already done it when I try it. And then a lot of times somewhat looks similar to that. And if it's not looking like that, I'm going to keep on working until it looks like that. But my whole thing is always just make it look fitting to this sport, like super free ski, freestyle, and not perfect necessarily. Like I always stay away from as perfect looking axes as possible. So I don't really want a dub curve to be like a backflip 720 to a backflip 180.
Right.
I wanted to really have a free ski, freestyle feel to it. Because already when like the double corks and all that came in, I was definitely against it, because I thought it was acrobatic and like gymnastic-esque style. So I wasn't really about it. But then I realized that everybody that was hating on it was the people that couldn't do it. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to have to learn it to be able to say that this is not the good style. But then once I learned it, I started figuring out that like, oh, you can actually make this cool and not like a acrobatic aerial flip. like by just not doing a perfect axis, like not necessarily going fully upside down, or instead of doing a 720 screw, you do like a 630, so it goes into a 450 instead of like 7 to 3 or whatever. And that just became like another extra fun experiment to like try imitate all these crazy rotations, but do it with a free ski freestyle look to it.
Yeah, there's something to making a trick look good, and that goes across all boards. But someone who makes every trick look good is not only you, but Phil Casabon. And I have a segment at the end of my show that we're at right now called Inappropriate Questions. And I get someone that you know, Phil, to ask you 3 questions, and they can be anything. Phil asked 5 questions, and since it's Phil Casabon, we let him ask as many as he wants, because you know what? I've got you on the line. He was able to get on the line. He came up with 5 questions, and we're going to get Raph, who is sitting next to you, to play number 1, because I traveled across the country without my iPad, so I can't play it to you right now, but Raph can. So get ready for Inappropriate Question number 1.
Under what circumstance were you called the Thing?
That's crazy. It was when I used to drink alcohol. Whenever I get drunk, I don't know.
You become the Thing?
I become the Thing, because they always say like I'm not Henrik anymore. Like when I'm looking at somebody, you can see through me. Like I don't look at that person, kinda. So I just became a Thing. I'm not so much me when I'm the Thing. So that's why.
All right, we will jump into question number 2.
What was your beef with Wallish all about around 2013, 14, 15, those years?
It wasn't real, to be honest. It was this idea that Iberg brought to me, actually. And he was saying that it would be so sick to going into Olympics and having some controversy. Basically like Simon and Tanner had, where it was like beef. But he told me that like I have to do it, but I have to talk to Wallish and make sure he's cool about it, or like agreeing on it, so like nobody knows that we are actually like not beefing in real life, but like it looked like we are biggest rivals and enemies. And I remember bringing it up to Wallish in a way at Simon Dumont Invitational in 2011. But I brought it up like that we should do some edits together, and him being Tupac and me Biggie. And then I guess I just started thinking that I was gonna beef with Wallish, and then he blew his knee like a month after that. When he did that, I was like, well, okay, I'm not gonna really push on this anymore, because I kind of felt bad, because it was like going into Olympics, and I knew he wanted to go there and I wanted to go there with him, rival or not rival. But yeah, that's when it ended.
All righty. Well, we will go with his next inappropriate question, because I don't think we're going in the right order, but it doesn't matter.
I wanted to know if you could give us a bit of a hint about John Nunes and the CL95 saga. What happened with all that?
Yeah, it was this clothing company that we got asked to join, and it was basically like Raekwon the chef from the Wu-Tang Clan was gonna start from his 20 years anniversary from his first album, The Purple Tape. He wore a jacket that was called Snow Beach in one of the most iconic music video, Can It All Be So Simple? And on the 20-year anniversary, he wanted to reproduce that jacket but make it his own, because that Snow Beach was a Ralph Lauren one. And this time he wanted to do it himself. And yeah, he wanted a ski crew on it. And John Nunes was somewhat a friend from back in the day. Like they had met when they were younger in New York somehow, and in Miami, and like they were pretty close at the time. And I guess they was trying to get Shaun White at first, but Shaun White was like on some big money, crazy stuff.
He wears tight clothes anyway.
Yeah, and then somehow they came across my Wu-Tang is for the Children video at Olympics, and they're like, this is the guy. And then they contacted me, and I got to go visit Raekwon for his 20-year anniversary party, and then go to Coachella when he first wore the jacket.
That's so cool.
And then I knew Phil's contract was going to be out with Arash, and I wanted the almighty B-Dog to be with me because we hadn't been on any clothing sponsor together. So Phil was going to get on it too. But then I think like a lot in music world, and maybe John Nunes was probably pretty crazy or something. I don't really know. I wasn't too involved with it, but Raekwon and John had a fallout and couldn't work together, and it kind of all ended, unfortunately, because it could have been a very wicked experience to have a company together with Raekwon, but yeah, it didn't work out, and we got kind of fucked over, but yeah.
Well, that sucks, but it's Raekwon. Perpendicular to the square.
And no matter what, we got a lot of great things out of it. Like Raekwon made a song for us for Be Inspired. We got to visit Raekwon. I got to talk to him a bunch of times. So all that was like basically worth all the fuck over from John Nunes.
That's amazing. How about the last inappropriate question?
Being that Henrik traveled the most I ever knew, how frequently did you wash your clothing traveling across the seas again and again? How many times did your clothes see a washing machine?
Probably as little as Phil's clothes is seeing a washing machine.
So you guys just like these smelly, gross guys when you get on the plane, like you're at the spot sessioning a rail like 20 minutes before your flight, and then you get to the airport and you smell like shit? Is that how you roll?
Yeah, definitely. But it's funny because in the beginning, I was always getting so picked on for being the smelly guy, and Phil was like the fly god and had like all super nice clothes and was like smelling good and all this. But then it was so awesome because then around the educational style year, Phil just surpassed me so much with the smell, and he was like way more stinky all of a sudden than me, and it was so awesome because it was like almost like karma in a way that got him. Because I remember Tanner would just like go crazy on him for smelling too, but obviously me as well too. But it was just funny that Phil, from being like the flyest, like so clean and nice, to like way more dirty. But back to his question, I wash my underwear and socks as regular as somebody, maybe not necessarily from a washing machine, but in the sink if I don't have a washing machine. But I try to keep that clean. But I've always been like kind of nervous of washing my hoodies and tees and all this because I really don't want them to go smaller or shrink while washing them. So yeah, I wash everything that's touching my body directly, but everything that's on the outside, I never wash.
All right, well, I'm just going to chalk that up as you and Phil are gross when you travel, and that's just how it is. You will wash stuff in a hotel sink or shower, but that just is what it is. At this point, I want to thank you for making time to do the podcast. I want to apologize for my technical difficulties in the beginning. We lost 15 minutes, and you seemed totally cool with it. And for me, watching you ski always puts a smile on my face. It blows my mind. I have to rewind what you do almost every time just to be able to see the different nuances in your skiing because it is so amazing. And I love that you're always focused on style and having fun. And it's been a pleasure to see your career over the past 20 years-ish. So thank you for your time, man, and look forward to seeing the movie when it comes out pretty soon.
Wicked. I'm so appreciated for the opportunity to talk with you, and it's been awesome to go back to memory lane a little bit. Thank you so much. And Tanner was the 100, right?
Tanner was 100, yes.
Yeah, so sick. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be the 200 then. Thank you so much.
So that was time with Henrik Harlaut, and man, he seems to have his shit figured out. He doesn't worry about anything but skiing, and he's always smiling and having a good time. And he's winning, like all the time outside of the Olympics. And he's got a few more shots at Olympic gold. And if he gets that, well, I doubt things will change much for Henrik. He seems like a chill dude. But my prediction is that he gets a medal in the next Olympics or the one after that, and then we see him fully take Tanner's path into the backcountry. And who knows, maybe even the Freeride World Tour one day. It's like anything Tanner can do, Henrik's out there saying, I can do it better, although he would never say that as Tanner is the idol. And it was cool to hear how stoked he was to be episode 200 after Tanner did 100. And if you look at both of these dudes over the years, I mean, their bodies of work speak for themselves. The medals they were able to win, those also speak for themselves. But it's just the style that both of these dudes have that separate them from the rest of the pack. And that is the podcast for this week. That's a wrap on the 200th episode. I want to thank you for listening and ask you to please review me on iTunes, and it's easy to do. And even if you already subscribe to the podcast, these are the steps you're going to need to take to review me, and it only takes a minute. First, hit the podcast icon on your iPhone. Second, search for the Powell Movement. Third, click my logo. Fourth, scroll down to where you see the stars. Fifth, tap 5 stars, and that's it. You're done, and it's greatly appreciated. I thank you for that. I also want to thank my amazing sponsors who make this thing happen. They're the 10 Barrel Brewery, Stanley, Cole Headwear, Elan Skis, and Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Have a great week, everyone.